Hello everyone, Jamie Starr here for the New World News Network. On this episode, I'm going to do an expansion upon the white boy with dreads controversy because it has spread now that Justin Bieber, right on cue, of course, decides to dread his hair. And part of me that, thinks everything is tightly controlled by global elitists really feel as if Justin Bieber's handlers saw that the traction and amount of views, even the amount of views I got on the video about it are, leaps and bounds beyond the regular ones. So I think they told him, hey, dread your hair, it's just hair, you can cut it off, do whatever the fuck you want with it. I've had dreads, I have them, let me re-show a few of them. So, oh, look at that, oh, privilege, oh man, appropriating culture, oh, so racist, oh, someone cry about it. So anyway, what people do with their hairs, whatever. But I think more importantly, the thing that needs to be addressed, and I'm going to use 3 articles to illustrate this, is cultural appropriation is neo-segregationism. It is people wanting to segregate things into different, white people can't have dreads and only Mexicans can eat tacos and, this sort of insanity. So here's our first article on Vice by Wilbert L. Cooper. Now, Wilbert doesn't exactly sound like a black name to me, so I wonder, along with appropriating the English language, if he's appropriated his name from somewhere. And this is the problem with this whole concept of cultural appropriation, is when people talk about it, I just try to tell them, like, you don't want to go down that road because it's not going to end well. And I'll bring up a handful of examples. I think a notable one, like I mentioned, the restaurant things, both Indian restaurants and Jamaican restaurants have curry chicken dishes. Who owns curry? Are the Indians appropriating the Jamaicans, or the Jamaicans appropriating the Indians? Should one of them stop using the seasoning? Like, what sort of insanity and mental gymnastics do you have to go through in order to make this make sense? So, Wilbert L. Cooper, senior editor. Wilbert is from a suburb of Cleveland where every street is a cul-de-sac named after a forest animal. Forests are racist. White people are in forests. Black people are in the Sahara and shit like that. So he would probably enjoy Elephant Lane and Tiger Boulevard more than, Chipmunk Terrace. He now works for us in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which is arguably even more homogenous and suffocating. Yeah, see, when people come together and cultures merge, it's suffocating, it's killing us. But at least you can smoke pot on the sidewalk without getting hassled. Just roll it with a little tobacco. Wilbert also earned a master's degree in print at NYU. He keeps telling us it's not a joke, but we keep shaking our head like this guy, hoping he catches on. And of course he's not going to, because I'd bet you NYU is where he was downloaded with his mind control programming, which is why he sees the world through the ideological lens that he sees it through, which is obviously that of a Marxist. He probably doesn't even realize he's a Marxist. Most of them don't. They just think it is what it is. They don't even realize that this is a set of theories that were developed that have been taught, and people have now projected it upon reality. It's very much Darwinism for social science. And so, little background, he's got his Bieber article. We're still marching towards MLK's promised land. No, you're not, buddy. You're marching the opposite direction. You are, like I said, a neo-segregationist. A few music articles. Life, Death, and Inequality in Cleveland. Dead or in jail, the burden of being a black man in America. And this is, I've mentioned this before. These people will only acknowledge and identify with the victim class. I saw an interesting video recently where they go through crime stats for places like Canada, Sweden, UK, places that didn't have the slave trade that America had, or it wasn't as big and expansive as America's, and even America's is inflated a lot. America's was nothing compared to the Caribbean. And you still see the same thing. You still see about a 10 to 20% of black people committing about 80% of the crime. Now, I chalk this up to them having higher testosterone levels, leading them to be more competitive, more aggressive. It is what it is. Here's the reality, though. No one's getting arrested for being black. You get a trial of your own peers that includes black people. You could have a black judge. And if you ever were arrested for being black, you could just find a black lawyer and sue the shit out of the places. I, interestingly enough, had a conversation on Facebook recently with a guy who posted a video from that old white lady who goes around convincing other old white people that they're racist and they don't even know it, where she asked a group of people, would you stand up, if you would willingly switch places with a black person? So I comment on the video saying, hey buddy, listen, when I was in school, black people were assumed better in bed, bigger dicks, all the girls flocked to them. In music class, being told you had white rhythm was the worst thing you could hear. If I had to choose between civil rights, being able to go after people for hate speech, discrimination, and everything like that, as opposed to my rights as a white person, hell yeah, I would switch places. I was immediately told, then I must not understand it because I am white, I cannot grasp this concept, and that I don't even understand civil rights. So I told the guy, I guess I don't, because I don't understand when civil rights were set up for black people to try to even the playing field after years of oppression, why they are now being used by gays, transgenders, women, illegal aliens, Mexicans, whatever. Why are civil rights that were specific for black people now being exploited and used by everyone else? And of course, I was just told I'm a racist. And so that shuts down that, because when someone says you're a racist, what they're really saying most of the time is you are challenging my worldview, shut up. Because calling someone a racist is only bothersome to people who aren't racist. Because if someone is a racist, it is generally who they are, and they wear it on their sleeves, and calling them that is not going to offend them. They're just going to look at you like, no shit, what fucking gave it away? So, again, this is very selective seeing things that way. Another small thing I had on Facebook, a friend of mine who does tons of community outreach stuff, teaches karate lessons for kids, did my tattooing apprenticeship under him. He was posting online about how he met a black woman who basically tried to tell him his blackness was invalidated by the fact that he married a white woman. And he was just asking people how they feel about it and everything. And I told him, of course, using the phrase that they all hate, that those are black supremacists. They are no different than the stereotypical ignorant KKK person you see on a pulpit trying to say that we cannot allow our pure white blood to mix with that of the Negro. I mean, it's that basic attitude. So, it definitely goes both ways, and it's a shame that it does. And these people are people who perpetuate these ideas of cultural appropriation and everything like that are black supremacists, and they should be identified as that. Butt injections. What am I saying when I say nigger? I'm still trying to figure out what the most loaded two syllables in the English language mean to me. See, this is the problem. It's so personal. It's the identity. It's the, it's the ego of it all, and it's so overborne. Like, I'll give you a hint, buddy. You want to figure out what it means? Buy a dictionary. Google it. Like, look it up. It's not personal to you, and this is the problem. So, let's get into this moron's actual article. Justin Bieber's dreadlocks show how white people still steal everything. And here's the thing, is that, the problem is if I were to go and say, if someone were to ask me, what is black culture? Inevitably, people will say hip-hop. And that's really all you can say. Now, on the same token, I can say that hip-hop has done so much of a disservice to black people, because you have artists like Rick Ross being like, I'm selling dope, I'm on my iPhone. Coming out the same week, everyone finds out the NSA is spying on you through your phone, so you should probably not be selling illegal substances through it. And it's just marketed this sort of degenerative culture towards everyone. So, the one claim to fame is an awful one. And if you were to go and say, oh, well, African culture, that's like tribalism, face paint, spear chucking, living in mud huts, that, of course, would be called racist, even though it might be true. I mean, a lot of Irish cultures lived poor and were enslaved and, you know, peasantry. And also the homogenized thing mentioned about Williamsburg, you know, part of it is it's already happened to white people. White people have already had their cultures completely obliterated. Catholicism is one of the last bastions of their culture. St. Patty's Day, all you know about it is leprechauns and shamrocks. People don't know that St. Patty was a slave, that he found Christianity, and the whole actual history of it. It has become homogenized, just like Williamsburg. So, where everyone's been talking about black hair lately, there is a viral video on WorldStar where a girl confronts a white dude with dreads on the grounds that he is appropriating her culture. Then earlier this week, white teeny bopper turned sex symbol Justin Bieber unveiled his new dreaded emo swoop to the horror of woke black folks everywhere. Both the aforementioned video and Bieb's new do have inspired some righteous think pieces and frustrated tweets over the complete lack of self-awareness that some white folks have when it comes to basic shit regarding race and privilege in this country. See, and this is the craziness. Knots in your hair is a privilege. Like, it's so nuts. Where these people live such spoiled little fucking entitled lives that they could even fucking put these words together and think that it's legitimate. Here's the reality. All through history, whether it's pirates, Celts, Vikings, black people, the poorer classes did not have access to beauty products like combs and brushes. I mean, my sister's redhead, Irish, curly hair. If she didn't brush her hair, it would end up knotting together. It would turn into dreadlocks. It's not something that is done with privilege. It just fucking happens to people. If some black people go out in the sun with their hair being wet, it will eventually knot together. It's not something that's, you have to explain basic reality to these people because they're existing in a mind control programming. That's not to say Bieber should be burned at the stake for rocking dreads. I certainly don't think the new look should consume more of your righteous indignation than over the mass incarceration or voter disenfranchisement of people in color. Like we said, the mass incarceration, I'd say a good 70% of that is called consequence, buddy. Black people have very real, tangible enemies in this country. Enemies, they're at war against someone. They don't know who, because whenever you ask, it always gets real vague. It always turns into the systematic institutional oppression of white people through white supremacy. It's never a person. No one's personally responsible for everything. It's these imaginary constructs. Justin Bieber doesn't even come close. He's trying to develop his own style from borrowing from elements he likes. Yeah, he was already told he was culturally appropriating, oversized t-shirts. And, this guy has an article, The Evolution of Masculinity, of Black Masculinity Through Fashion. And what do you have to say about Jaden Smith wearing dresses? I see lots of black people being emasculated. If that's another bit of black culture, if you want to lump cross-dressing into there, you can have it. And that's the crazy part, is some of the things that these people are like, oh, this is ours, I'd be looking to give away. Like, if you were to say, oh, well, Jaden Smith and Young Thug and, Lil Wayne rocking dresses and cross-dressing and shit. Yeah, you want that to be your culture? You want to claim it? Have it. You want hip-hop? You want rap music? Have it. Like, fuck, no one wants it. They're not positive things whatsoever. So, of course, we go into the typical Elvis Chuck Berry bit. I have said in the other video, Johnny B. Good was a song written about a white guy playing guitar. Hip-hop wouldn't exist if it was not for the Akai MPC drum machine made by the Japanese. Again, this is the road no one wants to go down, because they're going to end up realizing that you can't easily divide everything up and you will get made into a jackass. Miley Cyrus and twerking, you can have it. No one wants to claim twerking as theirs. Iggy Azalea, oh, who gets to claim shitty pop rap music? Have it. Again, like, this guy is paranoid over people claiming things that no one should want associated with them. So, yes, black folk have a problem when they see white people angling to dive into our culture. it's not that we don't want to share it and embrace it in the sort of melting pot ethos that makes this country an exciting place to be. We don't want to see white people rocking dreads today because we know they'll be telling us they invented them tomorrow. Oh, well, that's a nifty straw man you just built right there. This loss of credit isn't an ego thing. No, it's all your ego and your identity, because you don't have dreads. You just know other black people do. And we'll even see the other article, that I'm going to get into is so ridiculous because it just says, it basically acknowledges the Celts had dreads, other people had dreads, but the only reason anyone would ever have dreads right now is Bob Marley. It's not even black people. It's this one black person. So, and then, of course, they go on to all their bits about slavery and who could worship their own gods and perform their own music. And, of course, we're going to ignore Negro spirituals and verbal traditions, and how verbal traditions was how most of things got passed down. And, the calling of their own name, because obviously he's seen Roots, which was a movie written and a book written by a white guy and then attributed to a black guy. And I suppose the black guy who said he wrote Roots, who didn't write it, he wasn't stealing it from the white guy who actually wrote it. He wasn't appropriating it. Beyonce's not appropriating straight white blonde hair from white people. I mean, it can't go on both ways because, power and privilege equals racism, but, like, oh my God, Jerry curls and having good hair and white hair. And I mean, this is this guy's own projection of his own racism and delusions and why he wants everything segregated. I know these processes all too well. My dad's been rocking a Jerry curl since Billy Ocean was on the Billboard charts. This means that I spent years of hours in the black beauty salon as a kid waiting for him to get his hair done. Today, when I smell the sulfuric odor of chemicals used to straighten out nappy black hair, it makes me kind of nostalgic. So, I mean, I guess he does see Beyonce as culturally appropriate. Oh, no, see, here's the thing. Is he obviously, I'm sure he gets into it here. If a black person appropriates white culture, it's in self-loathing, hates themselves or blackness. He's not saying everyone that does it does that. He's just saying most of them. But when a white person does it, it's them asserting their power and privilege. No one's just doing things because they like it or want to share or anything like that. Let's see. So then he goes on about, black adults, predominantly historical universities like Hampton Business School, banned all students with dreads and braids from even enrolling. Bob Marley, whatever. Again, he wants to segregate it all. That's what he wants. Why it's not okay for white people to have dreadlocks. No, you can't use the Celts as an excuse. You've probably seen the video, having dreadlocks. And here's the funny part. In this article, Black Man will tell you why white people should not have dreadlocks. This is by no means intended to oppress any white people who reassure me they have Jamaican friends and are avid drinkers of Red Stripe, so having dreadlocks surely doesn't make them an appropriator of black culture. I mean, the stereotypes are just left and right. These people love stereotypes, though, and they want the world to exist in a confine of them. Having dreadlocks doesn't mean you're a racist person, and sure, you may not have done it to piss people off, but that doesn't mean that dreadlocks on white people exist in an anti-race vacuum. And he obviously acknowledged the Celts, and that there are all these cultures that had them that weren't, in meeting with one another, emerging. So, sure, dreadlocks have appeared at different and unconnected parts of the world. Over time, you may attribute it to Egyptians, Celts, but really the source of its current popularity is largely due to the life and death of Marley and the apparent humanist movement he created. This is what bothers me so much about these cultural Marxists and social justice warriors. They all have X-Men powers. They're fucking psychics, because look at how easily they're so comfortable with just prescribing and ascribing motives to people. Like, they know your reasons. You can't even think outside of, if you have dreadlocks, it's because of Bob Marley. You must love reggae music. You must, I can tell you what, when I dreaded the front of my hair, it was for utility. It's just so I can pull it behind my eyes, out of my eyes easier. It's never was Bob Marley a fucking thought when it comes to me and my hair. And it drives me crazy how comfortable these people are to try to tell you your reasons for everything. And then they will get mad at someone if you ever try to, you know, stereotype them or think they're doing something for some sort of reason. I mean, it's the same thing with the whole, oh, you're an Islamophobe, you're a xenophobe, you're a homophobe. Like they're a doctor and they can just diagnose you with a mental illness just like that. You could, you know, I've seen people say, if you support Donald Trump, you are a racist. Like, okay, so supporting someone over their trade policy means I don't like people of color? Like, where's the logic? There is none. It's a complete disconnect. And it, again, only works like that in this weird mind control where you think people are talking in codes and this sort of appeal to intellect and academia where they, you know, if you say welfare, that means black people. If you say abortion, that means women. If you say this, that means that. So you can't even communicate with these people because they're not listening to what you're saying. They're trying to decipher it in their construct of mind control. So here's the same thing. If you wear dreadlocks, you think it looks cool, you're perpetuating your white privilege. You're damaging the anti-oppression movement that they truly symbolize, and all sorts of this nonsense. Now, here we have an Al Jazeera article, The Bane of Cultural Appropriation. The campaign against cultural appropriation is part of the broader attempt to police communities and cultures. And this article actually has it right, because this guy goes on and he mentions, you know, Beyonce's Bollywood outfit. No one says anything about her and her straight blonde hair. Kylie Jenner's cornrows, Canadians doing yoga, English students wearing sombreros, and American students wearing Native American Halloween costumes. Because everything's racist. Everything's racist. Everything's sexist. Many of these controversies have been seen as laughable as Bieber's locks, but what they reveal, however, is how degraded have become contemporary campaigns for social justice. Cultural appropriation is, in the words of Susan Scafidi, law professor of Fordham University and author of Who Owns Culture? Appropriation and Authenticity in American Law, taking intellectual property, traditional knowledge, cultural expressions, or artifacts from someone else's culture without permission. So you should ask black people if you can have dreads. This can include the unauthorized use of culture's dance, dress, music, language, folklore, cuisine, traditional medicine, religious symbols, etc. See, everything to be segregated. Nobody but Chinese people in the Chinese restaurant. It doesn't matter that most of them probably know how to cook Chinese food. Most of the Mexicans probably know how to cook the Mexican food. They are only allowed to go into the Mexican restaurant. And I guarantee you, what's that going to do for those businesses? It's going to destroy them all. These people, they just want to burn the world down. So you have a colonial past. He goes into this whole bit about the Romantic movement and then how it ends. Radicals challenging racism and colonial rejected the Romantic view of culture, adopting instead a universalist perspective. From the struggle against slavery to the anti-colonial movements, the aim was not to protect one's own special culture, but to create a more universal culture in which all could participate on equal terms. Equality, coming together, again, the Martin Luther King idea. In enters American politics. In recent decades, however, the universalist viewpoint has been eroded largely as many of the social movements that embody the viewpoint have disintegrated. The social space vacated by that disintegration became filled by identity politics. As the broader struggles for social transformation have faded, people have tended to retreat into their particular faiths or cultures and to embrace the more parochial forms of identity. In this process of old cultural arguments of the racists have returned, but now rebranded as anti-racist. And that's what this is. It's neo-segregationism, racism, it's all of it. Just coming in this, oh, we need equality, we need diversity, but don't ever mix. Don't have blacks over there, whites over there, Mexicans over there, Chinese over there, and all the women, you separate from the men. So, campaigners against cultural appropriation have argued when privileged cultures adopt the styles of lesser privileged ones that they help create stereotypes and of such cultures are like and assert racial power. By dressing up as a fake Indian, one Native American told white students, "You are asserting your power over us and continuing to oppress us." Yes, because if I put a dreadlock in my hair, I am then oppressing black people. I am stopping them from achieving their dreams. One dreadlock to rule them all. That's what it is. I mean, what sort of warped outlook on the world? These people are perpetual victims, and they will just try to find whatever to rationalize why they aren't shit. After all, to suggest that it is authentic for blacks to wear locks or for Native Americans to wear headdress, but not for whites to do so, is itself to stereotype those cultures. And that's where these are the racists. They want the stereotypes. They want to exist solely within stereotypes. Because then, of course, then they'll be a lot more comfortable prescribing motives to everything. If everything's just in stereotypes, they can say, oh, well, of course only black people are eating and enjoying watermelon because they're black. Ha 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 ha. Culture does not and cannot work through notions of ownership. The history of culture is the history of cultural appropriation, of cultures borrowing, stealing, changing, and transforming. Nor does preventing whites from wearing locks or practicing yoga challenge racism in any sort of meaningful way. And that's why these are first world problems. These are problems that privileged, spoiled brats have. They're not real problems because it doesn't end racism or, sexism or anything like that. It just is them throwing hissy fits. Who is the authority? This takes us to the second question. Who does the policing? Who gives the permission for people of other cultures to use particular cultural forms? Who acts as the gatekeepers? Most black people could probably not care less what Justin Bieber does to his hair. Inevitably, the gatekeepers are those who are outraged by Bieber's locks. So you just, like Anita Sarkeesian said, everything is sexist, everything is racist, and it's your job to point it all out. And that's what these people who have taken these social science courses and have degrees that are in unemployment, basically, that's what they do. They look for things to become outraged with, because what else are they going to do? They're a victim of mind control. The debates around Bieber's hair or Beyoncé's Bollywood outfit are relatively trivial, but in other contexts, the creation of gatekeepers has proved highly problematic. In many European nations, minorities have been seen as distinct communities, each with their own interests, needs, desires, and each with certain so-called community leaders acting as their representatives. Such leaders are frequently religious, often conservative, and rarely represent of their communities. But they wield great power as mediators between their communities and the wider societies. In effect, they act like the gatekeepers to those communities. And notions of offense are often used to police not just what outsiders may say of a particular community, but to shut down debate within those communities. Think of the fatwa against Salman Rushdie or the shooting down of Shi'i activists by the Sikh playwright Gurpreet Kaur Bahati. Sorry, I'm butchering those names. But, again, the real fight against injustice begins with ridding ourselves of our self-appointed gatekeepers. And that is the best way, is that, again, when people come out with this cultural appropriation, neo-segregationism stuff, just tell them you don't want to go down this road. And as soon as they start bringing stuff up, just debunk all of it, because all of it is easily debunkable. It is not an accurate way to look at the world. It is a mind control program, and that's the thing, is these people are victims, and they don't realize they are victims. So, that's my expansion on the cultural appropriation issue. I hope everyone enjoyed.